in Ukraine and Russia, we used to have the problem of our own internal conflicts in the continent. We know that we have a lot of conflicts here and there on the continent. Somalia, we have a war in the Central African Republic, a lot of, all these conflicts. Like Libya had a war, Tunisia. So even before that, our production, there was a problem in terms of production. And we also have the climate change. Climate change has been there because we have a lot of problem of drought. If it is not drought, we have the issue of, if it's not drought, we have the issue of flood. We have the issue of poor soil, desertification. All those factors, are there because of the issue of climate change. So here in our department, what are the measures or initiatives we took in order to mitigate or support our member state in terms of food security? In terms of food security, we became more and more conscious during the COVID-19 pandemic. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, what we did is we wanted to know what is the impact of the pandemic on the food distribution. So we went to the value chain, and the distribution on the value chain, the distribution chain was really disrupted because of all these measures that the government took. They took in terms of not propagating the virus everywhere. So the lockdown really caused a lot of problems. So we came in with our partners, with the FAO, and we say, let us try to see how we can come in and solve this problem. So we came in with FAO, and we created a task force with the core agent or the core tax stakeholders in this agricultural ecosystem. So we came with, we created a task force. So we are working with FAO, IFAD, WFP, the World Bank, African Development Bank, the EU, and other NEPAD. Those are really our partners that they deal with this. They are intergovernmental. They are our partners that they came with us, and we started working together to mitigate. So one of the first things we got the ADB is part of this task force. The ADB immediately we had the problem of the Ukraine and Russia crisis. The ADB came through our task force. We started thinking of an initiative, and we say, okay, what are the core impact of this crisis, this global crisis of Russia and Ukraine? We say it's cereal, because 30% of the production, Africa imports 30% of the wheat in Ukraine. That has an impact, and also we import 35 to 50% of the fertilizer in Russia. So this impacted us very seriously, and the ADB and us, we came out with a very comprehensive program, which is the Africa Food Emergency Production Plan, which ADB puts to our member states $1.5 billion in order to produce 4 commodities. That is, 4 cereals, that is wheat, rice, maize, and soybean. So the program has a duration, a time for 4 years, and to produce it in 4 years. So one of the good lessons is that if we go to Ethiopia, if we look at Ethiopia, from this loan that they got, the grant that they got from ADB, today Ethiopia is exporting wheat in Africa, in the region, in the eastern region. So this is really one of the measures that to say, if we come together, we coordinate and create synergy in our programs, because we don't want everybody to do the same thing. Let us come together, put all the energy together, and then go, align the way we came, align, and we have a result. So Ethiopia is really stimulated to do more, and today we even have the problem here. We also benefited from that loan or grant, Kenya. So they are producing a lot of maize, and I think Kenya wants to start producing also wheat in those things. So in terms of still the issue of impact of the climate change, The areas that are affected, I said, but we engaged ourselves due to that task force that we created. We got $2.8 billion in a project called to build resilience of the food system in Eastern and Southern Africa. This is really a milestone. For the first time, the World Bank has never given such an amount of money to this sector of agriculture. But due to this coordination, we're able to convince mostly the board of, the members of the board of the World Bank that, agriculture is important, we are in danger, and we have. So we brought up this result. I'm just giving the results of African Union so that most of the time people say, what is African Union doing? Too much depending on the partners. It is Africa. We need to take our own responsibilities. Most of our programs in African Union is lack of investment in the sector. That's where the problem is, a lack of investment, because we need to invest in research and innovation and technology. Our productivity is the lowest productivity in all the region globally, in terms of globally. So we need to really invest in this type of program. This program with the World Bank is 8 years, and we believe that in 8 years we are going to change the narrative. We are going to improve in terms of food security. Now we are also engaged, before I go to the other sector, we are also engaged with some country that wants to assist us to recover from this pandemic and the global crisis, the geopolitical crisis. So we are engaged now with the World Bank. No, not World Bank. We are engaged with China and China and Germany. But with the China is the program is to modernize African agriculture. From their experience, we are working with them. They have given us already $2 million for us just to prepare the studies so that they will start working with our member states to modernize, because the way we are doing agriculture, our farmers, we need to strengthen and build capacity of our farmers on the continent. We also have a support from Germany. With Germany, we are calling it Germany. We are calling it the modernization cooperation between Germany and also they are also in the modernization of cooperation and dialogue. African agricultural dialogue. It's important to have the African dialogue, because through the dialogue we can bring the stakeholder, farmers, civil society, to have the dialogue and know what is the need. But today we do it with Germany, but we have already done it when we prepared this the first food system UN Food System Summit. We came during 2 years. We were doing a national consultation, and we came out. We were the only region that we came out with one important tool, which is the African Common Position. So this African Common Position has 43 game-changing. So when we are talking about 43 game-changing, we are talking about the infrastructure. We are talking about the infrastructure in the rural settlement, because the youth, we are the really capital that we have, human capital that we have, to go and produce. Our farmers are old. All of them, they don't want to go to the rural settlement because there's no internet. Today, everybody is linked on the internet. So all these areas, we touch it if we want to change. We have to bring also storage facility, because we have 30% of our farmer produce. This 30% of the produce, it gets lost because of lack of storage. So those are the areas that we really need to bring more input. The fertilizer, we are organizing our fertilizer summit, because in 2006 there was the first fertilizer summit, the Abuja one, where our head of state, they say we should use at least 50 kg per hectares. How many countries were on track? No countries on track. While if you go to Asia, the yield per hectare can get to 150 kg for maize, 120 for rice. They have a very high yield. But in Africa, our average is 18 kg per hectare, which is very, very low. We didn't even got to reach 50 kg per hectare. That's why here in Kenya, we are going to organize in October the fertilizer summit, so that, and soil health, because most of our soil are deteriorating, so we need to do. So those are the type of really engagement. So to finish with the agriculture, I don't know what is my time, because I want to give you time also to ask me question. Malabo Declaration, you all know Malabo, CADEP, we are very familiar with those flagship program of the African Union, of the Continental. So Malabo Declaration has a 10 years action plan, 2015-2025. So this 10 years action plan is going to expire in 2055. We evaluate every 2 years. We have a biannual review report. How many countries are on track? Only one. To end hunger by 2025. So now we have to prepare the post-Malabo. So we are now going to launch the post-Malabo. We are on conversation with our core stakeholders, because we want to do an African approach. First of all, let us see where are the gaps. What is the evidence that we need to change the narrative. And then from there, we meet the way we did with the African Common Position. We meet all of us together to say what are the areas where we have gaps and we need to improve. That is the post-Malabo project initiative that we are preparing now. This is now our priority, to see how best we can really, achieve the SDG 2, ending hunger in 2030, and the Malabo Declaration. So those are, at this point, I don't know if I can go through the wall, or I go for the environment. The director of environment is here, so if there is more question, he will. So in terms of environment, we are really, here we are preparing for the African. We are preparing for the African Climate Summit. This is the first time this continent is going to organize a summit, on Africa Summit. As you are all aware, that we are not really part of the emission. We don't emit so much because of, by the force of poverty, we are not industrialized region. So we are preparing ourselves in a common position, so that when we go to COP28, we know where do we want. We know where we want, and this summit is going to happen here in Nairobi. Why Nairobi? Because the chairperson, the coordination, because we have our own policy in the organ of the African Union, which is the CAWOX. So CAWOX, the coordinator is His Excellency Ruto, and we are all organizing it, the African Union together with the host country, this summit. Where are the areas that we really want to focus? Because most of these things we all know. Most of these things I'm saying, you can go to Google, you will see it. Where are the areas? We want really to promote a green growth, because they say that we should have, a technology to lower the emission, low carbon emission. So we want a green growth, or a green development, for the country. When we are talking about it, we look at the issue of a green growth. We're talking about some areas where, like energy, because they're telling us the fuel is very polluting, and we know it. So that's why we have to look at how we can have even go through the industrialization, but with a green, a green approach, or blue approach, if we are talking about the blue economy. So this is where we want. And the second one is to come out with a climate financial mechanism, because we don't have access to all these global, global and the green funds. We have no access. Africa is getting very little. So we want here to come with a mechanism. We are preparing our mechanism. So when we go to the COP, where we have the COP of party, we are in the conversation with our partners, globally. We know what we want. We say this is the way forward for Africa, so that we can have access to finance. So in terms of the blue, the environment, we have this problem. And if we look at the recent areas, because we came out with a very concrete strategy, which is the African climate change and resilience development strategy, with its own action plan 2022-2032. So the 10 years action plan. So we didn't have any framework where we can guide our member state. But today, last year, we're able to approve this one. So even if you want to go to any fund for climate fund, we say this is our like they say, we don't have bankable project. But that one can serve us to build the bankable project, because all the pillars of what we need to go to adaptation, because adaptation has always been our key position, common position during the negotiation of the COPs. Adaptation, and we also want now, we achieve some milestone initiative, which is lost and damage, because they need to damage what they're doing. So in terms of all these disasters, we have some tools, and immediately after COVID, we came out also with GRAP, the Green Recovery Action Plan for resilience, because today we are just talking about resilience. And then we have pillars that we even are saying where these disasters are really eating. And in Africa, even today, when you look at the urban settlement, they are really having a lot of problems. Like in the city, urban settlement in city, I can give you an example of in 2019, when we had a cyclone Ida, which destroyed about 90% of one city, the city of Beira, 90% of the city, and the land. And we also had a very serious disaster. In terms of urban, it was the landslides disaster that led extensive human being and economic losses in the city of Freetown in 2029. So in the graph, I've already said the pillar number 4, it is really green city, pillar number 4, 5, Director. So we need the green city. We need the green city. We have also the problem of resilient agriculture. So to see how these things are interlinked between our environment, and anytime we are trying to develop any program, we look at the sector, because most of the sector are affected. But agriculture is the most affected in terms of the impact of the climate change. And if you look at the most vulnerable, that is the rural areas, we have drought, we have pest and disease, where we do the production, is affecting, we have floods in rural communities. All these factors of food is affecting our food production and rising the food insecurity. So I just wanted to link between the two sectors, and thank God the African Union put these two sectors together, so that together we look at it and we are not fighting each other like in other countries where they have Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Environment. When the environment will say, the issue of forest, which is another issue, don't cut the tree, the people will say this is our livelihood. So we have this conversation. But when you have, there are many countries, they have all of them in one ministry, all of them in one ministry, so that people will be sensible where we have to protect preservation of our environment, when we have to protect the environment, and when we need to also ensure food security. I submit.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I think Commissioner has given us a wealth of information, perhaps even opening up new areas that we may not have been aware of. And in that regard, I just wanted to mention that Commissioner referred to CAHOSC, and that in full is the meeting of the committee, it is the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change, in case you want to follow up on that acronym. And also to mention that all these things are available on the website of the AU. The department has a page on the African Union website where they post all this information for your follow-up. And before I open the floor for questions, my brother, in the morning you spoke about the AFCFTA. I just wanted to mention that since AFCFTA is a cross-cutting issue, Commissioner also has a mandate with regards to that. So you are free to ask any of the commissioners how they interact with AFCFTA. Okay, now is the time for you to ask your questions. Can we have a round of questions? You indicate by raising your hand, and then you would tell us your name and your news agency, and then you ask your question. Do we have any questions? All right.
Okay. Oh, thanks, Win. Okay, thanks, Commissioner Josepha. Naftali, like I said, is my name, working for Shinwa News Agency. I am interested in the two flagships, that's Cardiff and Marabo. Could you please enlighten us on how far we've gone in terms of implementation and what we have achieved as a continent, courtesy of those two flagships, as far as food security is concerned?
Let me just give a little bit of background. In 2003, in 2003, in Maputo, our head of state, they saw that food security was a priority, is a priority for a continent, because we need to feed people. So they came up with Maputo Declaration and Malabo. That Maputo Declaration and CADEP. CADEP is the initiative. So in the Maputo Declaration, they were very clear, because you cannot, say that you want to be autosufficient, in food production when you don't invest. So one of the number one of that declaration is the 10%. They say to invest at least 10% in agriculture sector. And the second one, it is really to ensure food security and nutrition on the continent. During 10 years, we evaluated, how are we doing because those are policies, but the implementation is at the national level. So we did the evaluation, and we said that things are not moving because they did not align or domesticated these policies on their own national development programs at the national level. So if you don't invest, nothing will happen, no project will come out. So all this was important for them. When you are putting your budget, if you are aligned to the Malabo's pillars or Malabo policy, you have to do it. They were not doing it. They were not even investing in the rural community, nothing in rural areas. So we saw 10 years after, it was not going, the government again, because this type of summit, it's about it. It's for us to really, look at, catalyze our sector. How are we going in all the sectors, not only agriculture? You have been interacting with my colleagues, all the sector of development for the continent. So but in Malabo, they came with 7 commitments. So if you don't implement those 7 commitments, or you don't align it in your national investment program or your national development program, you will not attain the result. So, but if you follow it, so the countries that are following, we know it because we have evidence base. Because we have the CADEP, the biannual review report. In the biannual review report, we have the indicators to fast track, progress in each indicator. Those are 43 indicators that we have in terms of nutrition, in terms of yield, in terms of tripling the inter-African trade, because agriculture, in terms of trade, I will answer the question of the gentleman over there about our link as department. Let me anticipate, because you put the question on the floor. Are we interacting with the IFCFTA? With the IFCFTA, as you know, 75% of the inter-African trade is the agriculture, the agriculture crops. I mean, agriculture in general and agricultural services, because we are not industrialized, but we trade a lot in agriculture. So it's an important sector in the implementation of the CFTA. And with these problems of, taking advantage, comparative advantage, countries that have excess and the countries that have deficit, how can we interact in terms of trade, in terms of the inter-African trade? So we came out with an initiative. It was even the first time we discussed the initiative. It was during our CADEP PP, our annual meeting. It was here in Nairobi. We came with this initiative CAP, the Common African Agro-Industrial Park. We came with that one. We presented to our head of state. Let me just give you a brief how this thing will work. We said, okay, there is already this agropole that ADB is supporting the member state. But we say we want to have a food reserve and a food sovereignty on our continent. Because what made us to really accelerate, even before the COVID, we had already, because when we came here, I think it was in 2019 or 18, we had the CADEP PP here in Nairobi. We are already thinking about our own, because our target is to end with import. To end with import, because Africa is importing from $45 to $50 billion per importing food per year. That money that we are giving to other markets, why can't we invest this money on our continent when we have the arable land, we have the aquatic resources, and we also have a young population. We have the youth that we are there, but we are not doing it. So why can't we look at, a food security and a food safety, a food sovereignty, or bread basket in our continent? So we say, okay, let us look at the agroecologic advantages with each region. We have 5 regions. The northern region, they are very good. They can, for fruits and vegetables. But, well, this is just an hypothetic when we're trying to come with the initiative. We advance a lot. There is my director, the head of this division that is really Dr. Janet, she's here. They are really working very hard. So we want each to create like a hub. So we look at West Africa, we say, okay, let them be the hub of rice. We looked at Central Africa, cassava. Here, we say cereals. And then South Africa, we say livestock. So those are the type of reflection, so that even if there is a crisis, at least we have a food reserve and we are trading amongst ourselves.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner, for this very comprehensive talk. My question is about the mechanism of the AU on agriculture, especially food. And is there any mechanism per country or a mechanism that can lead all countries to have a very clear strategy for food reserve? I'm saying this because I have a statistic. For example, in Sudan, before the war, we have a lot of people who do not have food. But after the war 2 months ago, when people vandalized the storage, we found that our food has been stored for 2 years, 3 years, and people are hungry. Now, the Gulf, 80% of the Gulf dependent of meat from Sudan. After the war, we discovered that there is a lack of meat there, while we have the #1 animal resources in the country. Talking about bread, the Emirate invest more than 1 million hectares of wheat in Sudan, in the North Sudan, while people of North Sudan also are hungry. So we are selling bread there and our kitchens are out of bread. What is the mechanism that we can actually look for?
I think each country have its own national program on food security. Some countries are even very well organized. They have a committee of food security, and some of them is even at the president's cabinet that they look at the issue, the programs of food security. But the problem is not lack of project. I believe the 55 countries, majority of them, they have the project. Project for cereal, project for fishing, they have their project. The real constraint, most of them, is lack of investment, access to finance. They don't have finance to implement those foods. Some, I don't know if I can say it's by corruption of ministries of commerce. They just want to import. They don't want to produce. And maybe while importing, they also get more money in the commissions of this. And also, one of the issue that is very serious, importing food is okay, but my this thing has dropped a little bit. So some countries, they know their own advantage, what they want, what they don't want. So the countries are sovereign. We at the African Union, what we do is just to bring, the flagship program, the framework for them to follow, help them domesticate it in their national program, and also help them, mobilizing fund. Like I said, the issue of climate change, we had we have the problem of droughts in the Horn of Africa, Eastern Africa, and Southern Africa. We mobilize with the World Bank. This money, if we really apply it very well, we will change. We will change the narrative. We will have enough food, and we need to implement all this thing and be bold to mobilize a fund so that people. That's why here in Nairobi, the president is always saying that we should have access, to those international financial funds, or agencies, because we have no access. And with all these things that we are going through, we have the problem of instability in our continent, we have the problem of climate change, we have the problem of now COVID, pests and diseases. You remember that we had the fall army worm, we had the cricket invasion. So all these issues, we need to, start looking for this thing to mitigate, or to mitigate, to tackle all these things. But it requires finance, because technologies, if you want new technology, you need to have finance. So access to finance. That's why our this in African Climate Summit, it's very important, because we are going to focus more on finance, because we are not the how do I say it? We are not to blame. We are not causing it. So there was a Paris Agreement. Let us implement Paris Agreement. There was a pledge of $100 billion yearly to help the countries, the developing countries, the islands, because there are some islands, they are really suffering. They cannot even produce nothing because of all this extreme weather event that is happening worldwide. The continents, due to lack of adaptation, we are more impacted by all these extreme weather extreme weather events.
Okay, do we have another question? Kennedy, I think you'll be the last one.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner. Thank you for an elaborate press conference on this. My question is on the efficiency of the food markets in Africa. We seem to have a problem with small-scale traders, especially the cross-border women. They seem not to have closer or unfettered access to the borders of each other's country. I think it seems to cause more problems. We also have the problem of the culture, where you have regions where people have like fish and they don't consume the fish, and it is supposed to go to export, and sometimes at the export at the border, you find that there's a problem getting the commodity across the border. Would you exactly say what you do in terms of making sure that African markets are efficient, and also trying to help with the issue of the attitude amongst the consumption?
Yeah, what we are doing in African Union is access to markets. This policy is being built. Maybe Dr. Janet will come in with a very short, because we are running out of time. With access to markets, all these commodities you are saying, those products are the one that makes the food security, part of the food security. So what we want is to make sure that farmers, fishermen, even pastoralists have access to market, from production to the market. This part is really, we have the deficit, but we are working on proper policies in order to assist through agribusiness. So I will pass the floor to Dr. Janet just to really brief how or what type of approach and how is all these tools that we have, policy tools that you have in your department.
Thank you very much. While we are waiting for Dr. Janet to get the microphone, whoever has the microphone, please give it to her. We have less than 5 minutes to conclude our briefing, because I think our transportation is limited to end at 6 p.m. So if you can just do that within a minute, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and I recognize the presence of Her Excellency, Ambassador Josepha Sacko. Now, with regards to your question, yes, we do realize that a significant percentage of our smallholder farmers, they are women. And we know that with the women farmers also, there are some special peculiarities that they face, particularly in terms of some of the non-tariff barriers to trade that they're experiencing. And now we are looking at it within the context of how do we facilitate the access to the markets through the AFCFTA implementation. So every department now, we have come up with some implementation plans and some strategies in terms of how we can actually make sure that we take on board the specific and peculiar challenges that women are facing in terms of access to markets. Access to markets is just beyond the cross-border trade. We also have challenges in terms of their access to finance, challenges in terms of their access to inputs, challenges as well in terms of their access to new technologies on trade and nutrition. And so within the broader framework of how our department is also contributing to the AFCFTA, we have also come up with specific strategies that are looking at how we can facilitate the access of women beyond just the smallholder farmers, the rural women as well, to be able to trade and to be able to address most of these challenges through some of the policy frameworks that we put in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure, Kennedy, if you want more detail, Dr. Janet is sitting right next to you, so you could expand on that. We really have to close because we've run out of time, but I want to thank you very much, colleagues, for your interest in this issue and for all the questions that you've asked. And I saw many of you taking notes. That means that this is something that is really relevant to our development and to our daily livelihoods. Before we close, let me take the opportunity to thank very much Her Excellency Ambassador Josepha Sacko, who is the Commissioner of Agriculture, Rural Development and Sustainable Environment, for the time that she has spent with us. Molalet will give us further details as to the schedule of press conferences tomorrow, but you can also find it in the media center so that you know exactly what is happening at what time. But for now, thank you very much. We meet tomorrow.
Thank you for participating, and I hope that all this information will help us to advance this agenda. Thank you.